I just couldn't play the game. So there was massive sensory overwhelm as soon as I went in, the lights, the sounds, the huge amounts of people. And the personalities were huge, vibrant. Unbeknown to me, in the outside world, there was a whole population of neurodivergent, queer and neurodivergent people that were behind me. And I was like, wow, like something I said had some kind of meaning or value. I feel like my life has to mean more than what it has been.
Before you finish, have somebody who'd like to come and say hi to you.
I'm scared. Hello! Oh my God!
The Hidden 20% won Best Interview Podcast at the British Podcast Awards, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for your support. We really want to do more, so follow, subscribe, and let's get this message out to more people. Ali Bromley has made history as the first lesbian to win Big Brother UK. She also happens to be ADHD. As a forensic psychologist, Ali brought a unique perspective to human behaviour and proudly represented the neuroqueer community. Her journey was a rollercoaster of conflict, breakthroughs, and a heartfelt tribute to her late brother. Today, we dive into what carried her through. Let's get into it. Let's see how great minds think differently. So, Ali, I want to start with a really, really simple question. Like, how the are you?
I'm okay, I think. Although I was just having a bit of an offload to one of the other housemates on the way in about how coming out of the house is quite overwhelming. So I think the first few days I was out, I was quite sort of dissociated. And now the reality of everything is kind of sinking in a little bit. So I'm okay, I'm good, I'm happy. And just focusing on catching up with friends and family and things like that, really.
Are you glad for the experience?
I'm really grateful. But I'm still processing. So I think when someone asked me this before, I was like, ask me in 6 months, because there's a lot to process. Like my nervous system is still a bit frazzled. I'm really, really grateful. But I think it's been quite overwhelming that some of the storylines that I expected to be storylines were not, because obviously we don't know what's being aired and what isn't. So when I was in the house, I was having a negative experience at times, and I didn't expect to have any positive reception at all. So unbeknown to me, in the outside world, there was a whole population of neurodivergent, queer and neurodivergent people that were behind me. And I was like, wow, like something I said had some kind of meaning or value. So because of that alone, I would say, yes, amazing experience that I really value and I really appreciate. But obviously there was some ups and downs, and anyone who has watched the show will have seen them, because there were times when it was a little bit testing.
Yeah, and you wanted to leave, right? I mean, I've seen the clips of you kind of going, I'm off.
Yeah.
I'm off, see you later.
Yes.
There is something happening with, we've had Amy Spalding on here.
Yeah.
Who I know is a big fan of yours.
Love Amy.
Bradley Riches.
Yeah.
Also on here. There's something happening where this medium of a reality show for inclusivity, neurodiversity, just becomes this amazing representation and role modeling format. You're a forensic psychologist, and we're going to talk about that. But why do you think that is?
I think there's so much reality TV. And there's a lot of reality TV that's quite similar. And then you have these kind of odd shows that show something a little bit different. One of the thoughts I had going in was, I don't think I've seen people on TV necessarily that are that much like me. There is not that much queer female representation anyway.
Yes.
Queer female neurodivergent representation even smaller. So I was like excited about the fact that there would be this kind of, I guess, silo to have all these different personalities in together. And I think there's some excitement about that, and that's why those TV shows are popular. But I think also people want to see real people and real life, and I think that's why shows like Big Brother has gained such popularity. More popularity than I realised, actually, having seen some of the feedback since I came out. But yeah, I think that's the reason why. It shows something a bit different and a bit unusual, I suppose.
You were incredibly good at dissecting what was going on in the house. And I'm fascinated by this parallel of what is ultimately a big psychological human experiment. how did you see things in there? And how did you balance your professional expertise with your, I guess, your personal experience?
I think it was difficult to balance. For me, I think what actually happened was I went into the house, I was prepared to be overwhelmed, but then I was more overwhelmed than I thought I would be.
Okay.
So there was massive sensory overwhelm as soon as I went in, the lights, the sounds, the huge amounts of people, and the personalities were huge, vibrant, like extroverted people, which is not necessarily my default position. I can be those things, but I have to be in a certain context to be those things.
And that's every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all the time, right?
Yeah, that was happening all day, every day. And the other housemates were like super bubbly from the minute they woke up to the minute they went to sleep.
How did you regulate?
So I went to my bed.
Okay.
I had earplugs. They gave me a massive box of earplugs before I went in. And if I was feeling overwhelmed, I either went to the garden and found a quiet corner of the garden, or I just went to the bed and just lay down for a bit. But then that was tricky because then people would come and like bounce on the beds next to you and like start talking to you. So I think thinking about the question about being a psychologist, it sort of started to intermingle because where I felt overwhelmed, I think my drive to understand kicked in. So then my brain was like, like trying to read people, trying to understand what was happening, trying to make sense of interactions that I didn't always feel were very real or very genuine.
Yep.
So I think that's what was happening for me. And I think for me, psychology is something I've hyper-focused on for a reason over a number of years. And it was almost like it kicked in as a way to manage the other feelings of overwhelm.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes, makes total sense.
So I'm like scanning my environment, trying to work out what's going on and like who likes me, who doesn't like me, who's a safe person, who isn't a safe person, like how am I going to manage this interaction? And then how am I going to manage my facial expression so I look like I'm friendly? One of the things that I explained to the housemates was that like my face doesn't always represent my thought and feelings. I caveat that slightly with the fact that there are a few facial expressions that I've pulled that are just a bit sassy and a bit like I've obviously clocked something. Those are obviously the parts of my personality coming through. But there were other facial expressions that I've pulled that apparently were a bit spaced out or a bit blank or like a bit distracted. And I was kind of constantly having to say, like, it's just my face. Like, please don't read negative intention to it because it's just my face when it's at rest. And
but do you think that atmosphere anyway puts everybody on hyper alert?
I think so. I think we all were. I think actually it was a positive experience and all of us are really lucky to have been in there. But I think there were times when we were all like hyper vigilant, hyper alert and actually in like fight or flight mode sometimes. Yeah. And that's not just me, not just the other neurodivergent housemates, but you know, the other housemates that don't have those diagnoses, I think they felt overwhelmed as well. Like, I think for anyone, it's a lot to throw yourself into. But it would be anyway, living in a small space with 16 people. So
100%. I mean, my idea of absolute hell, personally. So why was it important for you to talk about being ADHD? So
I have a diagnosis of ADHD. And I think I'm on the autistic spectrum, but my autism is not diagnosed.
Okay.
But my brother had autism. My sister has an autism diagnosis. So statistically, the chances are quite high. And actually, I trained to assess autism and then was like, oh, the call is coming from inside the house kind of thing.
No way.
Yeah. And then I was like, I haven't personally pursued a formal diagnosis of ASD, but I do have a formal diagnosis of ADHD because at the time I was looking for kind of maybe some medicinal support or something. So I wanted to talk about ADHD because I clocked quite early that I wasn't necessarily the same as the other housemates and I was feeling a bit strange and a bit alien. And I was also significantly older than a lot of them. They were in their 20s, I'm in my late 30s. So I kind of just wanted to explain myself and explain who I am so that they could hopefully receive me in a more kind of understanding way. Because I was aware when I first went in and I was feeling overwhelmed that I could easily be coming across as rude or a bit uptight. I could feel it in myself. So in saying that, that's not a comment on how they were with me. They were absolutely fine. It was just that I felt awkward. So I was like, by the way.
So you can signal, hey.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to say like, by the way, I have this thing and this is what it looks like in me. So I was like, you know, if I disappear and go off to my bed or whatever, I'm regrouping and I'll be back. Or, you know, if I go a bit quiet, I'm overwhelmed. Or if I'm distracted, like I'm trying to listen to you, I'm trying to pay attention. But but I have to give myself like internal cues to do that sometimes because my brain is always doing quite a lot at any one time.
Yes. Were there other neurodivergent people in the house?
Yes, there was. I think there was. So I won't name specific housemates because obviously it's up to them how much they want to talk about whether they're neurodivergent or not. But there was other neurodivergent housemates that did have diagnoses. And then there was other housemates that were almost certainly somewhere on the spectrum. And they talked about it in the house actually as well and speculated. After I said, you know, what my diagnoses were, they were like, oh, that sounds like me, or I've been, you know, waiting to go and get an assessment done.
Okay. Did anyone ask you for an assessment?
No, they didn't actually. Thank God. Would have had to like politely decline that one, especially in that environment. Yeah. But yeah, no, there definitely was. And actually, I think that show attracts neurodivergent people. And I'm not sure exactly why, but it seems to. There's something about the colouring outside the lines, I think, that draws the neurodivergent people towards Big Brother, because Big Brother does that quite nicely, actually. Yeah. And there's a lot of negative talk or dialogue about Big Brother, but it does that very well. It colours outside the lines. It shows people from different backgrounds being themselves, whether you like it or you hate it. So, yes, definitely other neurodivergent.
And therefore, like attracts like, as we know.
Yes.
And so,
yeah.
It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's going to snowball.
Yeah. And I had conversations with the other housemates about how we were going to cope in the house and how we were going to manage, how we were going to like give ourselves moments of low stimulus in order to cope and stuff like that. So it was a challenge in there, but actually the more openly neurodivergent people kind of gravitated together, I think.
Yeah. Strength in numbers.
Yeah.
So being autistic and ADHD, I'm often, and this is getting better actually, but I can sometimes feel in conflict.
Yeah.
And in kind of push-pull, which I'm learning to like really harness, because there's great bits about being autistic and being ADHD, and they can work in tandem and they can work really well together.
Yeah.
How do you feel any push-pull in your head?
I do, for sure. And obviously I don't have the formal diagnosis of the autism, but I do for the ADHD. I'm pretty sure about the ASD. I'm so many things that are opposite to one another, but at the same time. So I'm an introvert for sure, but I'm also an extrovert. You know, like I don't know what I was channeling to be able to come out of that house and be like running around the stage. Like I don't know what came over me, to be honest with you. But yeah, I guess that shows that I can be extroverted. I'm an introvert and I'm an extrovert. I'm confident, but I'm low confidence. I'm lots of like opposite things at the same time. I'm super organized, very, very neat, very, very clean, very, very tidy. Catch me on an off day and I'm the total opposite. And I just don't invite people around on those days, you know? I have need for order, planning and organization, but find those things incredibly difficult. And I was thinking earlier when you were asking about order in the house, I have at home a small bedroom that I've turned into an office. I have an entire wall that is like felt pads that I can just pin things to. So everything I need to think about and remember, I make a big visual of it and it's on my wall. I have a whole wall. It looks like a detective's office where you'd like put strings between things. And that's how I manage my life. So I'm like, and other people look at that and they're like, how does that keep you organized? Why don't you just put it in your phone? And it doesn't work for me. Like I can't use these electronic reminders and all that stuff. I'll still forget because I'll forget to look at my phone. Whereas if I have it in massive print on my wall.
Can't miss it.
So yeah, I think in summary, I'm lots of opposite things at the same time.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard, but I also quite like it about myself.
Yeah, I can be so impatient and yet, so patient.
Yeah.
You know, I can wait. I've waited 12 years to do a project that I thought about 12 years ago. 12 years. But I'm waiting for the right time.
Yeah.
Because I'm working it all out and I'm working it through. And then I can absolutely love doing the same thing, eating the same thing, drinking the same thing, going to the same place, and then find that totally boring.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I'll eat the same thing every day and then one day I'll just never eat it again in my life. Like, I can't stand it, actually. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't stand that food.
Yeah.
It's funny. And I I quite like how they interact sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I don't want to undermine like how difficult it is, but I feel like different parts of my brain rescue me at different times.
Yeah.
So when I'm really burnt out or this is happening or I'm overwhelmed from a sensory perspective, then a hyperfocus will kick in and like save me.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I used to get...
And probably I can be very slow and steady being autistic and like want to dial into all the little details of something.
Yeah.
And then ADHD just goes, just get on with it.
That's how I feel.
Just get on with it. Take some action.
And then you suddenly get the energy and,
Yeah.
and like the dopamine rush, and
Yeah.
then you're away then like
Yeah.
doing what you need to do.
Yeah, it's this, I'm still trying to like understand it and figure it out. But I think now that the world has actually realized you can be autistic and ADHD,
Yeah.
that it didn't even fucking know about before.
Yeah.
And that you can have these seemingly polar opposite things.
Yeah.
It's probably why I absolutely love the grey area.
Yeah.
I love tension. I love something not being either or.
Yeah.
Like, I love holding that tension, can be really uncomfortable, even in work, you know, of like, no, but it can depend, or
Yeah.
actually just let's hold the tension. And yeah, we don't have to race we love putting things in boxes and
Yes.
compartments.
I actually talked about that on Big Brother. I was saying like, I feel like there's a lack of an understanding of nuance in the house. Like just because I dislike these behaviors or these interactions with this person doesn't mean I dislike the person. I just don't like that one thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And actually I love all of this other stuff about the person.
We just deal in absolutes, don't we? And,
Yeah.
and binary, you know, this
Yeah,
or that, this or
definitely.
that. You're in that box or you're that box. And I don't meet many people who are ADHD and autistic, so I don't get many opportunities to kind of talk about that, like harnessing.
Yeah, the push and pull of the sort of
Yeah.
opposing traits. It's quite hard to explain to people that your personality is context dependent. That's what I'm realizing more and more. And I think when I was younger, I was like, who am I? And that, you know, I'll be very open. When I was younger, I did struggle with my mental health. Like when I got my medical records for the Big Brother show, I was a bit shocked at how it'd been described, you know, long history of depression and all this kind of stuff. I didn't understand myself. I didn't know why I was the way I was. But the best way I can explain it is that my personality is context dependent, environment dependent,
Yeah.
people dependent.
Yeah.
Depends on the dynamics I'm having with, and none of those versions of me are fake or false.
Yes.
It's just that a different part of me will come out with a different personality or like in a different environment. I can go to a party sometimes, be absolute life and soul, or I can go in and feel like I'm going to have a panic attack. And I don't always know how to predict that. So sometimes
Yeah.
I just go in and I'm like, well, let's see. Like, let's see which version of Ali they're getting today. And like, now I'm older. And maybe it's a bit sad because in some ways I've got better and better at masking as I go along. But as I get older now, I can pep talk myself enough to be like, right, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this when you walk in. And if you don't do those things, people in the room are going to instantly think you're weird. So oftentimes I can do that and it becomes a bit more natural over time. But yeah, it's a strange place to be sometimes, I think, the inside of our minds.
Yeah. But I'm probably the same for every single person on this planet in some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not great at metaphors. So if anyone's got any amazing metaphors that are beyond my hare and tortoise idea for ADHD and autism, yeah, please send them to us because I'd love to hear.
I would love to hear them as well. Like in my mind then I was thinking it's almost like a horse and carriage, and the carriage is really heavy and really slow and the horse is like trying to pull the other part of it along.
Yes, I kind of feel like sometimes I've got a foot on the accelerator,
Yeah.
ADHD, and then being autistic is like my gear stick because I'm in control. It's all logical.
Yeah.
It's 5 things rather than the brake.
Yes.
It's just like stop, go.
And ADHD executive dysfunction can feel like stalling in traffic, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone's beeping at you and you need to go and you just bloody can't. Like no
don't
matter
know
what
what to do.
anyone does or says, like, yeah, it's really interesting.
What is a forensic psychologist?
So a forensic psychologist is a psychologist that has specialised in aspects related to the law. So I'm basically a criminal psychologist, but forensic psychology also covers kind of civil stuff as well, like family court and things like that. But I have been working with people in prison and people in secure psychiatric hospitals. That was what I was doing in the past.
And why did you train to assess autism?
Because there are very high numbers of people in prison that are neurodivergent, which myself and the company that I was freelancing for were becoming increasingly aware of. And by the way, most of us are neurodivergent on that team anyway. So there was just a massive need for it in prisons specifically. And often I was asked to do, a risk assessment for someone who was coming up for a parole hearing, but actually I'm doing sort of looking at aspects of personality, behavior, trauma. Something was missing. So I did the training to assess for ADHD and I did the training to assess for autism. By that point, I already had my ADHD diagnosis anyway. But definitely when I started to do the training for the autism assessment, I was like, okay, interesting.
When did you get your ADHD diagnosis?
It was just after the lockdown.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the time I was working in the NHS, I was working in a hospital 9 to 5, and I struggled to an extent in that environment. I was always good at my job, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure my previous managers can testify to some of the issues around timekeeping and organisation. But yeah, so I finished that job and then I felt really burnt out when I stopped. And then I started to think, actually, how long have I been masking for and how exhausted am I? Yeah, that was when I started to think, actually, I might need a bit of support. So a formal diagnosis would, even if, I'm sure in myself that like I am sitting in a certain area, I was like, let me get this confirmed because then I can access support for it.
And I guess you knew the conclusion, but how was the process?
I mean, obviously it's no secret. The waiting list for assessment, all of that stuff is absolutely horrendous. And at the time, I was in a privileged position where I could go and get that done privately. So I did. I just did the assessment bit privately to get the diagnosis. Then I was referred back to the NHS to kind of follow up for medication. When I went back to the NHS, back to my GP to think about medication, awful. So I never ended up getting medication. I just completely lost the will to kind of pursue that line. I went to my GP and obviously, you have 7 minutes in with your GP, right? Yep. So I knew I needed to get referred for blood tests and an ECG before I started medication. And that's what I went for. Obviously, my psychiatrist had written to my GP to say that's what I'd be coming in for. But the GP just had no understanding or no awareness of neurodiversity, told me in the 7 minutes that I had with him that I'm not neurodiverse. I couldn't possibly be neurodiverse because I've succeeded and I'd done well at university and that I have a job.
You're a psychologist.
Yeah, and said that basically I would ruin my life if I went on medication. I'd never be a mum. He was very upfront with his opinions, basically. And I knew that he was speaking from a place of misinformation because the medication that he named to me was not the medication that you treat ADHD with. So I won't reference the medication because I don't want to create a stigma around that particular medication, but he referenced it and was like, you will never be able to have children. You'll never function again in society if you go on these like heavy medications. It was so bizarre. And in my head, I was screaming like, just tell him that's not even the medication for ADHD. But I just felt so deflated I couldn't. I just got what I needed, which was the referral to hospital. Well, he gave me the paperwork to book my own blood tests, said he'd book an ECG, never did. So I never got the letter back about the ECG anyway. Okay. And I never followed up with the blood test because I was like, there's so much admin now at this point because I'd now have to go back to the doctors and chase up all the other bits. I just lost my way with it. And then I lost my brother. So I just completely lost track with everything because I had a bereavement. Yeah. So I never ended up following up with any kind of medication. But along the way, have learned ways to cope and manage myself through the work that I do.
I get so angry because I keep hearing this kind of story. Why, from like a, I guess, medical profession perspective, why are we so behind? Why is this so outdated and clunky?
I think something has happened with ADHD, ASD, where people are starting to learn more about it. And then people, therefore, are starting to recognize traits in themselves and are then going in higher volumes to get support. And then it feels like there's almost like this backlash of, oh, well, the old tropes that you hear, like, well, we didn't have that when I was younger. We all just coped. And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't know how to spot it. It was there. Just didn't have a name for it. People just struggled and weren't able to access support. Yep. But I think some of that thinking is still in kind of some of the medical fields. There's definitely a reluctance to acknowledge what it is. But, you know, I think that's also clouded by a lot of like self-diagnosis, social media diagnosis, TikTok experts talking about various traits that are probably not at all associated with these conditions. And overall, it's leading to a picture of misinformation. And medical professionals are no different to other people. They also are absorbing some of that information as well.
How did you tell the Big Brother team before you went in that you were neurodivergent?
Yes, and they access your full medical record anyway, so they have all the information about you before you go into the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they knew.
Okay.
They knew everything.
And what about, I guess, leaving the house and that support
Yeah.
of you don't know what you're walking out into?
I have to say, my experience of Big Brother support has been pretty good. There's a whole welfare team.
Okay.
There's a psychologist. I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow. As soon as you leave the house, you get a very quick press briefing just to kind of give you the heads up, like this is out there, this is out there.
Wow. How was that for you?
A bit mixed, but yeah, overwhelmingly, the response has been positive.
Yeah.
So
You won.
yeah, yeah,
You
that's
won.
true. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess, but still, even though you're walking out a winner, you've got no idea what's been written, what's been said, how you've been perceived.
Exactly.
How do you think you were perceived?
So I think I'm still trying to get to grips with that, because people from my friends and family who have contacted me have said, like, oh my God, the response has been amazing. You've had lots of good coverage. They were like, you came across as authentic. You came across it to yourself. That was the Ali that we love and all this kind of stuff. And that was really lovely. But obviously, like, you do get the odd negative thing filter through to you. It's hard to get a sense, because in the house, I didn't feel liked. That's no secret. I talked about that on the show quite openly. I felt alien. There were times where I felt really ostracized. And I really felt like I was screwing it up. I was, really getting it wrong and messing everything up. So I was so shocked that I came out to support. I think I'm still processing that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, it's so different to what my self-perception was.
Yes. And your experience versus everybody else's experience of you, totally like opposite, it sounds.
Yeah, I think so.
What's the nicest thing someone has said?
I've been inundated with messages from young people who have felt seen. And that is something I didn't expect going in. I just didn't imagine that would be a storyline, like my neurodivergence would be a storyline that got grabbed. And I've been inundated with messages from people that are like, I've never seen anyone like me on the telly. Like, this is amazing. And the same from the queer community as well. People have messaged me saying they've come out to their parents.
Wow.
Yeah. And they've been able to like point at the TV and be like, that's me. Like, I'm that too, you know.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I'm proudest of. And as a kind of add on to that, the second thing that I'm most proud of is that those people have met through talking about me. So there's like online little chats and different forums where people have made friends, people who might have felt ostracized and weird and a little bit different, have seen someone who's ostracized, weird and a little bit different, bonded over talking about it and made friends that, they wouldn't have met otherwise from all over the country and stuff. So those are my kind of two proudest things that have come out of the response to me from the house. Like,
it's mega.
That makes me feel quite emotional, actually.
It's massive, Ali. And the feedback, the only important feedback we get on this are those three words, I feel seen.
Yeah.
Like, those three, they're so mega.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's really heartening. And I don't think I've fully acknowledged it yet, because when I've been getting these messages, I sort of feel like they're talking about someone else. Because I'm like, wow, like, I don't know. I almost feel like I don't belong in the space that I occupy. Because obviously you live your life with these criticisms leveraged at you around like, well, you don't look neurodivergent.
Yeah.
You're doing quite well in life,
You can't be.
Yeah. And those people, they don't have access to what you've struggled with or what you've found difficult. All they see is you went to uni, you got a good job out of it. Well done. You don't actually.
You must be fine.
Yeah. So I think I have almost had that little bit of that sort of self-reservation of like, do I belong in this space representing these people? Can I do them justice? But I keep getting messages being like, this is like what I've wanted to see and this has made me feel better. Like, I'm wearing a bracelet today which says, you can't be what you can't see. And that was made for me by someone who showed up at the the final and gave the bracelets to my sister. So
Really?
there's a big bag of these like really sweet beaded bracelets. And this was the one that I've been wearing to interviews because I'm like, yes, that's the tagline that just means so much to people, or, you know, why they attach to seeing me on their TV screens. So yeah, it's really nice.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
And then to put a downer on it, what's the worst thing that someone said?
So I try not to read anything negative.
Sure.
So a lot of the negative stuff that I've heard is when other people have said, do you know that this has been said?
Okay.
So I tend to kind of go by the ignore,
Yep.
and don't feed the troll stuff.
Yep.
But of course, I've been called a fake lesbian because I've had relationships with men in the past.
Okay.
I'm aware of that.
Really? So like you can't,
Yeah.
you're not a real one.
Yeah. And I was just like, cool. Like, that's okay. You can say that.
Okay.
I think actually that was shouted out on a Big Brother episode late in life, which I haven't seen, but my sister told me about it. And then I think it was really nicely shut down by some of the
You mean someone in the
hosts.
audience?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then someone had said something like ADHD and ASD are not disabilities unless you're nonverbal. And, you know, it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're not bad.
Yeah.
You're not bad enough.
Yeah. And some of those, so I've had some of those criticisms. I think some of the other criticisms that have been leveraged at me are around not being intersectional in kind of some of the causes that I advocate for.
Okay.
Not thinking about people of colour and their experiences.
Okay.
Which to be honest, I think is a fair criticism, and I would welcome that because these are conversations that do need to be had. But obviously, when you're in the Big Brother house, you don't know what's going to get aired. You don't know what the storylines are. And the people out there don't know what you've talked about, what you've picked up on, what you've championed and campaigned for.
Yep.
The Big Brother production team, they have to edit down 24 hours into a 1-hour episode.
Yeah.
They obviously pick out storylines for each person. They can't include all of the context.
No, and it has to be cohesive as, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got to follow lines through.
Yeah. So I welcome criticism, especially about that sort of topic. But at the same time, I know who I have been throughout my life before the Big Brother experience. I know the conversations I've had with the people in my life, with the employers that I've had,
Yes.
in the working spaces, in the fields that I've kind of had a space in. I know how I've advocated for other people and thought about people from all sorts of different backgrounds. So my stance on that is, well, I've been out 4 days. Give me a sec and let's see where we can go moving forwards, because that's potentially helpful feedback and valuable feedback. And I'd rather show people through my actions rather than responding to comments on social media.
Sure.
I know who I am. I know who I advocate for and the work that I do whenever I have opportunities. So I'll just keep doing that.
Yep.
And if people want to see it, they will. And if people don't want to see it, they won't.
How does your ADHD show up for you?
So for me, it really varies. I have quite a lot of sensory issues, which may well be the ASD, to be honest, on reflection. So sounds are tricky. Lighting is tricky. So there's some environments that are quite hard. Like I don't go to supermarkets or shopping centres. I've been to 2 shopping centres this week and I felt like, why am I here? Overwhelmed, couldn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, but had to be there for various reasons and then quickly departed without meeting any of the needs that I went there for. So there's some environments that I just totally avoid entirely, which is fine. That's not a problem. You can shop online. There's all sorts of ways around that these days. So sensory stuff. Even things like remembering to eat and drink and not recognizing, which again is more of an ASD trait, not recognizing when I'm hungry or when I need to drink something. So these are the things that affect my physical health sometimes. And I have to do kind of a bit of a mental check to be like, you have to drink water. You don't like how it feels, but you got to drink it, you know, stuff like that. Time blindness, very bad. Like just sometimes I can't organize my brain in terms of planning. I find it very difficult. I remember when I was working in hospitals, there was one period of time where such basic tasks felt very difficult, like just planning things in a diary and like working out how things were going to fall in a day. But then I also have a need to plan and I feel like I have to plan. Otherwise, I feel a bit out of control. Those are kind of the main areas. And I get a lot of burnout. So that for me was really bad when I left my job in the NHS, to the point where for a while I was almost not functioning very well at all. So I was so burnt out. I had spending hours in bed each day just to try and regroup.
And then what about ASD? How do you think autism shows up for you?
I feel like I've had to learn how to be a human. And me and my sister make jokes about it all the time because I can sort of like I have this like narrative in my mind when I'm in social situations, like being like, smile at this person. That's what normal people like to do. Hug this person. That's what people like. And I said that going into the Big Brother house. I'm not touchy-feely person, but everyone was hugging each other.
Yeah.
I was like, right, I'm just going to have to lean into this. I'm hugging people. Like I'm, jumping on the beds with them. I'm quite literal. I know that's a stereotype of kind of ASD behaviours, but sometimes I misunderstand things because I don't get it.
Yep.
And sometimes I think really in terms of my interpersonal relationships, one of my main issues is if I think a thought in my head and I'm like, well, that's just the truth, I'll say it. And I'm not accounting for the emotional reaction of the other person necessarily. Yep. And then I feel quite justified because I'm like, but it's just the truth. Like,
yes.
And if we can all just acknowledge that this
yes.
is the truth, like you wouldn't have an emotional response to it.
Yes.
Which is, I think, very different to a lack of empathy because I consider myself quite an empathic person. And when I see people who are genuinely struggling or in pain or, I really feel it very viscerally. But sometimes I misjudge it. In my professional life, I don't think it has been too much of an issue because I'm in a situation with a client, for example, that I've trained to be in and I know how to respond to people and I've been doing it for years and years and years. So I know what to say and what not to say.
There's a process.
Yeah.
There's a structure.
I know how to deal with people that are highly stressed, maybe angry, maybe aggressive, maybe deeply traumatized. I find those situations almost easier to be in because I've learned really effectively how to exist in those spaces. But there's these like smaller social interactions that I get wrong sometimes because I'll just be like, well, it's like this.
Yep.
So a good example of that on the show was I was feeling so annoyed with some of the housemates at the beginning because I was like, but you're acting. Like this isn't... I was like, I came in to do a social experiment, and we all got the same brief from the beginning, which is they're not looking for people who want to be on TV. They're not looking for people who want to be famous. They want to take real people from different walks of life. And I was like, this is so exciting. Like, let's get involved.
Literal.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And then when I got in and I felt like people were not being fully authentic, I started feeling really irritated.
Yeah.
So then, and I don't know how much to continue talking about this because I think my time in the house is behind me now. But the main thing I guess that people have noticed is that one of the first interactions I called out was with another housemate who I was like, but you're being fake. Like, this isn't real. The things you're talking about are not real. And obviously at that time I was quite overwhelmed anyway from a sensory perspective. I was feeling a bit socially awkward. I was feeling a bit isolated. But I just thought maybe if we can have... So my thinking was maybe if we can have this conversation about the pressure to be in here and the pressure maybe to put your best foot forward or the pressure even to forget the cameras are there, which is something that you're told to do. And actually at some point Big Brother intervened and was like, guys, stop talking about the cameras, stop looking at the cameras. So it wasn't just me, okay, that thought those things.
Yeah.
I thought maybe if we can just have a conversation about the pressure to perform in here, we can let go of that.
Yeah. Let's have it out.
But it didn't go that way at all.
Okay,
it was really, really badly received. And I take responsibility for that because I wasn't very diplomatic. It came out in a moment of frustration. And then as things are in the house, conversations are then had by other people and it snowballs, then it's out of control,
Yes.
So I didn't handle it very well. In another environment in my personal life, I would have handled it more diplomatically or not handled it at all because it just wouldn't have been an issue that I would have ever faced before in my life. So... But
you had an expectation and an expectation based on it's not about performing and it's not about the cameras and it's about real people and that expectation wasn't met. Yeah. And you have a choice. Don't say anything or say something. And sounds like you're the kind of person who's going to say something. Yeah. And I think I'll be honest, when I was younger, I was not diplomatic at all. I would just say things and drop it and not even really think about the consequences. As I've got older, I've learned how to be diplomatic and how to be articulate and how to say what I need to say. In the outside world, I would say 99% of the time, I'm okay. Like I'm a bit thoughtful about other people's feelings. I do think in the house, I was a bit clumsy with that. Is this where the Red Witch comes in or comes from? Yeah, that would be the Red Witch. Yeah, so look, I'm taking responsibility for the clunkiness with how I spoke, but what you just described was this kind of I had this bubbling thoughts inside me and I could feel myself getting more irritated. And then before I knew it, it was out there and I was a bit sassy with it, right? So peeing everyone off. And that's where the Red Witch stuff came from. Okay. Because, and I understand this, right?
the person I was speaking to felt offended and they felt hurt and they felt embarrassed. And that's my fault because of the way I delivered it.
Yeah, but I feel to stand up for you, weirdly, to kind of go, yeah, but you're if you're calling me out and I'm because I'm performing or not being genuine, I'm not going to like it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like it however you tell me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I'm being called out, I'm being exposed.
It was a really tricky one. And I think, again, I remind myself that we were all under pressure. And, you know, there are reasons why certain people felt more pressure to present well than other people because of who they were representing in their lives and everything else. And I think that's totally valid. But yeah, that's where the red witch thing came from, or it might have come after. So there was another comment that I called out with another housemate who was being like, again, it's out there, you know, being quite sort of sexually explicit a lot of the time. And there was a few conversations I wasn't that comfortable being part of. Most of the time in there, you can just walk away. But if it's a situation where Big Brother has asked you to stay in a space and you can't move away, then it's difficult. So I just kind of said, like,
hard.
Yeah, I was like, can you just not? Like, my parents are watching. Like, I want to go home to a job, you know. That went down really badly. So I think it was those two combinations of events.
Okay.
I think those were the main ones, really, that like people have really grabbed onto as these like hugely controversial opinions that I had, which I don't think were massively controversial, to be honest. But that's where the red witch thing came from, because I guess they were in a situation as well of trying to understand what I was doing. Why is she doing this? She's trying to like target us, or she's trying to, I don't know, embarrass us or make us feel bad, or I don't know what their thinking was entirely. I'm not in their heads, but definitely the conversation was around a group of people in the house that, because of the interactions I'd had, took an exception to me and were like, let's get her out, get the red witch out, was the thing. Yeah. So that's where the red witch thing came from, which I fully loved, by the way. I ended up leaning into it, dressing up as the red witch for Halloween. Like, I had so much fun with it. I was like thinking, I've probably been called worse in my life. Like, I've worked in prisons. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's totally fine. And I had fun with it. I was quite glad in the end.
Yeah.
They called me that. So.
Yes. Do you think you will go for an ASD assessment?
Everyone in my family is, you know, like formally diagnosed. So I'm not sure. Part of me wants to, because maybe it would be nice to just be able to say that I know that I'm sure and I've had an independent professional assess that, as well as the ADHD. But the other part of me was like, well, I am who I am. Like, I kind of understand myself more now, better than I ever have done. Yep. Would it have been helpful for me when I was in my teens and 20s? Yes, because that was probably a time when I was struggling with my interpersonal relationships the most and having like difficult experiences, struggling with like emotional management and like ups and downs in my mental health. But now that I'm a bit older, my mental health is good, my relationships are good, I feel less of a need because I don't feel like it's impacted my life that much.
And you have, I guess, because of your professional experience, you have a really good level of understanding.
Yeah. And I know that I can access resources or support if I need to, you know, like I know the parts of me, and it's almost like a running joke with me and my girlfriend, for example, about which bits I do that are part of like neurodivergence. And she definitely is as well, but she's undiagnosed. You know, we all find each other. That's just how it works.
Like attracts like.
Yeah. So I feel that I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of who I am, the parts of me that are just personality, the parts of me that are part of neurodivergence. So maybe I will, but at the moment I don't feel like a pressing need to. And I keep kind of thinking as well, like, I'm wondering about even the word neurodivergence, because there's no such thing as a neurotypical brain. And there's so many of us, like, we can't be that sort of unusual. Like, I was thinking about that this morning, actually, about how actually, like, we're just, I think the issue is there's one type of brain that functions really well in society, and the whole system is set up around that, you know, 9 to 3 schooling, 9 to 5 working week, Monday to Friday, basically a capitalist system.
Standardized.
Yeah. And there's one type of brain that works well for that. And then because there's so many of us that our brains don't work in those kinds of environments, whether it's school or work, then we start to get these diagnoses that are labeling us as disordered or different. And actually, we're just different. Like, and the world was created for one type of brain, but there's loads of us. Yeah, I'm kind of sidetracking a little bit, but I guess I was trying to have a think in my mind about the relevance of diagnosis or not diagnosis and what that means for individuals. I think it can be super helpful because you get access to help and support, and you get access to media that can help you learn about yourself.
Yes.
But at the same time, I feel like for people, if diagnosis isn't helpful, then that's cool too. Like, just accept that you're different and learn about your quirks and the things that you need to build into your life that make life manageable. Because unfortunately, the world is built one way.
Yeah.
And we have to learn to live in it, social situations, work and school and everything else. So
what I find most interesting is that everything that, whether it's the hidden 20% or it's people like you going into Big Brother or it's films or it's celebrity, whoever, anything that is basically shining a light on this stuff and exposing it means there's increased chances of people who don't have the answers or who are confused or who don't know why they do things a certain way, finding explanations.
Yeah.
Regardless of like the names and the letters and what it all means. I know that I just didn't have the answers.
Same.
And now I've got some explanations.
Yeah.
That's hugely empowering.
And very freeing when you think maybe there's just something wrong with me. And then you're like, actually, no, there's a whole like dictionary of words that can describe who you are. And then attached to that is like all these ways of how other people that have had these experiences can learn to manage in the world. For me, I did quite well at school, for example. Absolutely fell apart at university. I couldn't. School learning worked really well for my brain because a lot of it is about repetition, or it was when I was a kid, right? So I think education has changed quite a lot in the last 30 odd years, but I did really well because it was repetition and I could kind of hyper-focus on stuff, repeat, put it in my brain, and then do an exam and get like 99%.
Yep.
Got to university, a lot of it is like self-directed study. You just have to listen in lectures. I can't listen in lectures. I could only listen at school because we were given exercises to do. Do you know what I mean? So I'd be in a lecture in body, my mind was somewhere else. So I really struggled at university. And I remember a university lecturer like saying to me in a one-to-one session, like, is there anything going on with you that can explain why you're not performing as well as we expected?
Okay.
Because I'd been really high performing all through school, all through sixth form, college, A-levels and everything else. And then at uni, I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. I nearly dropped out. I nearly failed my degree. And I just didn't have the answers for him because I was like, I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I felt like my mental health wasn't so good, but I didn't feel like that was an adequate enough reason to explain why when I went home to do work, I physically couldn't do it. Like physically couldn't do it. This like self-directed study that we were tasked to do. My housemates used to laugh about it. They'd come in the room and be like, Ali, you haven't moved and you've been staring into space for like 4 hours now. Like, what is going on? And I just couldn't do it. I kept getting lost in like my own mind.
But you didn't know why.
I didn't know why.
And you didn't, I guess, therefore have any tactics or tools.
Nothing. I just nearly failed. That was my only thing.
Okay.
And then I had to go back and do like multiple other things in order to get further in my career. I somehow managed to get through, but it was really hard. I found all of that really, really difficult. My doctorate, I had to take an extra year added onto it to give myself time to get it all done, write my thesis and everything else. I found it really hard. So actually, I think had I had the language then to explain what was going on, I would have just researched what to do, like how to help myself. But I was just like pulling myself by as best as I could. Yeah,
because ultimately, and you've just hit the nail on the head, that then it becomes your responsibility. Once you know, once you're informed, then you're like, great, now I can go and figure out what to do.
And I feel like neurodivergent people quite like that aspect of it. Like, give us a topic to research. We're going to be on it and finding ways to cope.
Problem solvers. Yeah. Or hyper-focus, lots of the characteristics and the good bits. How was repetition and routine for you in the house?
So we didn't really have a set routine in the house.
Okay.
We were on a different time zone to the outside world. So they control when you go to sleep and when you wake up because they keep the lights on. So there's so you're not allowed to sleep in the day. If you sleep in the day, they play an alarm. And it can be any obnoxious sound you can imagine. So I was like that at some points, like just so I didn't have to hear this like horn blaring or whatever. Like I tried so hard to stay awake as I was adjusting to this new time zone. And the hours they would keep you up to varies. So could be like 1, 2 in the morning.
Wow.
When we first went in, I'm sure it was later, 4, 5 in the morning. Wow. And then they wake you up at like midday, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, depending on what you're doing that day.
So your whole body clock.
Your whole body clock has changed. So that was what I think we were all adjusting to that in the first few weeks as well. It feels like you've gone to another country and your body is adjusting.
Wow.
Showers, and you only have access to showers when they say so. So sometimes they'd wake you up and be like, housemates, go and collect your, fancy dress costume or whatever and be ready in 30 minutes. Things like that really threw me off because I was like, no, I have to wake up, I have to eat, have something to drink. I have to. No, I have to. And then I have to go for a shower.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah, that's my routine.
And then I struggled because sometimes I was so hungry and then I didn't know when our next they were never going to leave us hungry.
Of course.
But because I didn't know what time I could get food, I think there's actually clips of me going around being like, are there snacks? Things like that. So there was no routine. And because they would have the day plan, but you didn't know what the plan was, you kind of just had to go with it. And they're always going to look after you. They're always going to give you opportunities to eat.
Of course.
But because I think it wasn't on our schedule, on our routines, there were times when we felt hungry or tired or like a bit discombobulated. Yeah. And there was a few times where I was like, I'm getting in the shower, and we sort of did what we wanted to do anyway. Yep. I think we were probably like the naughtiest housemates they've ever had because there was so many rule breaks and stuff. But so in answer to your question, we didn't really have a routine. So the only thing I could do was keep my bed space tidy.
Okay.
And that's what I did. So I had my shoes lined up at the bottom of my bed. I had my toiletries lined up on one side of my bed. Every time I used something, I put it away. I made my bed every day. Not as good as some of the housemates. Some of them, they're like bed making skills. I've never seen anything like it. It was like military style. But I just kept my tiny space neat. And that was enough for me.
Consistency wise.
Yeah. That was okay. Like I had to just let go of some things around like not being able to do what I want when I want, and also not being able to be in control of the environment when the lights go on, when the lights go off, when you're exposed to sound, when you're not being exposed to sound. But yeah, I just kept my little space tidy and that was it.
And then what do you like, I guess, in your personal life out of that kind of wild environment where ritual, routine, change?
Yeah, I used to really need a plan, and I used to need to know how my week was looking at the start of the week. I do for work anyway, but I used to be very like regimented with like social plans, and I needed to have a plan for the whole week at the start of the week. It's only in the last few years where I've let go of that and I go with the flow more. I don't have a routine because I'm self-employed, so I work when I have energy, I don't work when I don't. And that's my routine. Literally, that's my routine. Yeah. Sometimes my house is absolute chaos and sometimes it's absolutely immaculate because I'm really neat and clean and I hate it when my room's a mess or my house is a mess. But sometimes I know I have a goal of sorting something out, but I can't work out the steps to get to the end result.
Yeah.
So I still have, for example, 3 suitcases, half unpacked. Well, and when I say half unpacked, I mean thrown all over my floor from coming back from Big Brother. Yeah. I've got makeup everywhere, toiletries everywhere, clothes everywhere. Like everything's messy. My poor girlfriend, she knows how much I need like order and stuff. Before I came out the house, she thought deeply in my whole house and tidied it for me, made sure it was all okay. And then I just came home, exploded all of my belongings everywhere, and then have been running out all week to appointments. So that's how my life is. It's either I'm super on top of everything, or I've lost control of everything. There's no in between at all.
One extreme or the other.
I just hide the times when I'm messy and disorganised. I pretend it's not happening.
We had Rich and Rox on who are from ADHD Love. They call that Heidi up.
Love that, Heidi up.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Good phrase. How was it being away from your girlfriend?
It was really hard. I think I got in my head in the beginning that I had completely messed up going into the house because I didn't feel nervous before I went in for some reason. Which was a mistake because I didn't prepare myself for being nervous. Because I was like, I'm surprisingly calm, like sitting in the hotel and hiding, like eating my food, watching stuff on the iPad. Because obviously by that point, we'd already had our phone taken away. We weren't allowed to watch TV, even when we were in hiding. And then I was like, oh, I'm so calm. Got in the car. Oh, I'm so calm, so calm. Got out the car. Complete terror. They put noise cancelling headphones on me as I came into the studio. But then they were also talking to me, giving me instructions for what I do when I go up onto the stage. Absolutely terrified, felt like I was going to throw up. And all I was thinking was, it's raining, you're wearing heels, don't fall over.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got in and I had this weird moment of like, are these people looking at me? And of course they were, because they'd just played my intro VT. It was all so strange. And I was so embarrassed because I thought I've messed up my entrance. I was convinced, because I felt so bad, that I'd messed up my entrance. But I was telling myself stuff in my head like, shoulders back, chin up, don't fall over, wave, smile, engage with the audience. And I didn't know if I'd achieved any of those things. And I still don't know, because I haven't watched the entrance. But for some reason, I got it in my head that I'd embarrassed myself on the way in. And I absolutely believe that. And then when I started having disagreements in the house with some of the other housemates, I was like, well, my girlfriend's going to hate me. I'm not going to have a relationship when I come out. Because we'd had this whole talk before I went in about how I'll be in adult mode and how I'll manage and I'll be okay no matter what conflicts other people are happening. And before I know it, I'm in the middle of all the conflicts and I've like undone all the things that I had prepared myself for. So I spent the beginning of my time in there thinking, oh my God, like my partner's going to be so embarrassed of me. She's not going to want to be with me when I come out of the house. I was feeling really anxious about that. Then I got the call from home and I was like, oh, everything's fine. Like, everything's fine. Big brother, we're kind of like, I'm sure everything's fine on the outside, Ali, like wink, wink.
Yes.
And all this kind of stuff. And then I had a few weeks where I felt okay.
Okay.
And then towards the end, I was really missing home. Like, to the point where then I nearly walked out again because I was like, I'd got to the final. I was like, that's enough of a win for me. I didn't think I'd get there.
See you later.
I'm not going to win the thing. So like, I could just go. And I kept like eyeing up the fire exits.
Okay.
Because I knew that if I went to the one in the smoking area, I'm outside. Whereas I knew all the other fire exits just exited you out into the studio. Okay. But I knew that the one in the smoking area was to the outside world. And I knew where the main road was in relation to that.
Love it.
So I knew my exits. And I was thinking about just walking out. And then I was like, oh, can't go through the embarrassment of like packing my bag and then them persuading me to stay again. I can't go. I've had so many humiliations in that house. Like, let's just go with it now. But yeah, towards the end, I felt like leaving again. But I didn't. But I was just missing home so much. Like, so much. I was missing people that loved me. Yeah. I was missing people that understood me.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had some friends in there. I had people that I really, really warmed to. But I didn't have a feeling of being understood in there, which was really difficult. And I just wanted to go home to people that I know that if I'm clumsy or not diplomatic with my words, they're like, oh, that's just Ali.
But what I think's amazing within that is that you were yourself regardless. So you could have, kind of gone, oh shit, it's not safe to be myself here because I might not fit in, not sure they're going to understand me. So I'm going to sort of shape shift around that.
Yeah.
You didn't do that, even despite how you were feeling.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And actually, I think I did say that in the diary room, and they've probably, I don't know if they've aired it or not, but I did have a conversation there where I was like, I could just say and do the right things. Like, I've watched how people are interacting. It would be very easy for me to do this. It would be very easy for me to do this, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't play the game.
Yep.
I physically couldn't.
Yep.
Like, it made me give myself the ick,
Yep.
the thought of like playing a game or not being
and exhausting
myself. Yeah. And to be fair, I wouldn't have been able to sustain it anyway for like day after day after day after day.
So exhausting, isn't it? Trying to pretend to be normal.
Yeah. That's everyday life, right? When you go out to work stuff. And it's so lovely when you're around neurodivergent people because you can unmask and just be like, oh, like, I can just be myself and nobody thinks I'm odd, which is amazing. That's how I feel around my partner. That's how I feel around my sister.
Let's talk about someone who was also neurodivergent, your brother.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that losing him was also a factor in you going into the house.
I lost my brother Christmas 2022, so right at Christmas. So last year, Christmas was my first proper Christmas without him because I was still processing on the 2022 Christmas. And we hadn't buried him yet by that point. So last year was awful for me, like really, really bad. I just did what I needed to do to survive. So I got up and I went to work, and I went back to work quite quickly. And I kind of said to myself, you're not doing anything this year. Like, just sit with it, process it, do what you need to do. But I think I was in shock for a lot of it. Christmas 2023 came around and I was like, oh my God, I feel awful. It's getting worse. So the time between Christmas and New Year, particularly, I was like, oh, I'm sinking. Like bad sinking. Start of 2024, I was like, well, I am not going to feel better on my own. So I have to now, because I wasn't really socializing so much. I did see my friends. My friends were incredible. but I just didn't do loads of socializing.
Okay.
I was just keeping to myself a lot, very quiet life, work, walk my dog.
Simple.
Cozy at home, cup of tea. That was my thing.
Yep.
So 2024 came around and I was like, I literally have to start living my life. I have to, because I now feel worse than ever. And if I don't start putting stuff, I kind of decided to myself, put stuff into your life that could bring you joy or opportunities or experiences and just see how you feel was kind of my thinking.
Test.
Yeah. And I was like, and if I don't do that, I'm not going to feel better. And I'm certainly not going to feel better if I keep lying on my sofa, like in a state of like absolute shock and horror for like hours on end. So in April, I went to Nepal and I trekked at Everest Base Camp with a group of strangers. And that was like so formative for me. It was incredible. I met I was so lucky because the group I went with were hilarious. So every day I was laughing. I made some really good friends. And I was like, that could have gone the other way. I could have been like sharing rooms and like trekking in like dire circumstances at high altitude with people I didn't get along with. But I was really lucky. Everyone was amazing. And I was laughing every day. And I felt a bit like my old self. And I don't think I can go back to my old self. But I have been trying to find a new version of myself post losing my brother.
Okay.
That was one of those experiences where I was trying to like just have a bit of fun, have a new experience. I loved Nepal. When I came back, I was like hyper focused on researching how to move there permanently. And I was serious. Like if it had been an easy process, I would have been gone by now and I wouldn't have been in Big Brother. I'd be living in Nepal in the mountains, like farming yak. So that was one of the things I did. And then after that, I got back and I was like, right, what's next? And I don't know where I saw it. Must have come up on social media or something like this advert for like applications. So I was like, oh, okay, I might do that. And I started thinking, started as a joke, like almost in my mind, like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if I applied for Big Brother? One of my friends was like, you should actually do that. And then I didn't think about it. And then the deadline for applications was closing. And then I literally filmed an application like on my phone, like no makeup, like hair and like scraped back on my head in a mess. And I was like, I remember thinking when I did that first thing, I was like, well, there's no point in me like glamming up or dressing up for an application for Big Brother where I'm going to be like in my PJs and like, you know, bleary-eyed in the morning in front of people. So I was like, I'm just going to show this as I am. And then if they either like it or they don't. So that kind of thinking started quite early. I slung the video in. And then before I knew it, I was like moving through the audition processes and like passing each little point. And I was like, oh my God, I might actually go in. And then obviously I got accepted. But yeah, so thinking about my brother, I think the thought process was like so cheesy, and I hate these like sentences that people
don't judge it.
Give
just
you.
say,
Do you know what I mean? Like
you don't have
life
to judge
is short.
It. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was what I was thinking. I was just like, who cares? No, because in my head I was like, oh, I've got a professional job. I can't risk it. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then I was just like, do I even want to do my job for the rest of my life?
Sure.
Is this what's bringing me joy?
Yeah.
Like, am I making as much difference in the world that I want to make? Or might there be other opportunities for me if I did something different? And I just kind of thought, well, whatever happens, I'll survive it.
Yeah.
Even if I come out and like I've lost my job and like nothing else comes of it, then I'll survive it. So I just thought, why not? Like, let's have a weird experience that I'll always talk about, I'll always laugh about. Like, you know, I was dressed up as a wallflower at one point. You know, these are funny things. Like the fact that they dressed me up as a red witch, that's funny. Like these are things I'll laugh about. Once I've processed and my nervous system has stabilized post being in the house, these are things that I'll talk about and laugh about and forever. And not many people have the opportunity to do that. And these are the sorts of experiences that I'm trying to build into my life after losing my brother.
And what do you think Mike would say to you?
He'd be like, what the hell are you doing? He was not a reality TV show fan, but he would have watched every episode. He would have been in absolute hysterics and he would have been absolutely fuming at times when I was struggling. And he would have thought the exact same thoughts as me.
Okay.
Because that's how our brains are. He would have thought exactly the same things about how I was interpreting situations. And I know that. And the whole time in the house, I was I do this thing where I like talk to him like privately in my mind. I'd be like, Mike, blah, blah, blah. So I was like doing all of that while I was in there to try and like feel better or feel regulated or feel grounded. But yeah, he would find it hilarious, but it would very much be like an eye-rolling hilarious.
Okay.
Rather than this is the best decision you've ever made kind of hilarious.
Do you miss him?
Every day. Yeah, every day. And it's sad as time passes, because I'm meeting people now, for example, that have never met him.
Yes.
My new partner, never met him.
Yes.
You know, I miss him all the time. And, you know, especially in my last week in the house, it was really bad. I started having nightmares about him dying. And a couple of mornings I woke up and I was really distressed because I felt like I'd just been delivered the news that he'd died. I didn't know that they would air all of that or how much they would air, but I have been told that some of it did get aired. So there was an awareness, I think, publicly that I was struggling, that I was having nightmares. I was thinking about my brother. And I think it was because I was coming home and it was the last week. And in my head, I associated home with like going back to what I love.
Of course.
But it really brought up things that I wasn't expecting to be brought up in quite that way in the house as well, just because you're emotional anyway. But yeah, I miss him all the time. But I'm glad that I miss him because missing him is my memory of him and that's what keeps him like with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Movember and I did a panel a couple of weeks ago for Movember and I couldn't believe this stat. I couldn't believe that a man dies by suicide every minute.
Yeah, it's shocking.
I was so floored by that. That was the piece the guy from Movember opened up with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like I've been there. I've tried to do it over 5 times and had really good like proper goes at it. Not cry for help goes, proper goes. And
I'm so sorry.
yeah, I can't imagine what it's like to lose someone that suddenly.
Yeah.
That you share such a bond with, like brain to brain, of not just being brother and sister, but just sounds like, you know, thinking the same and having that kind of similar brain. Yeah, I don't know how you process that.
It's really difficult. And I think that's one of the things as well, thinking about neurodivergence. Like, we used to joke that we were twins, even though we were not. We were close in age, but we were not twins. And he used to say to me, like, when I got my ADHD diagnosis, he was well chuffed because he was like, yes, like we're together in this, we've got this. And he used to speak about it a lot more openly than I did.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely tragic. The statistics for suicide rates are tragic. And I think I wasn't necessarily sure how much that line of conversation would come out in the house, for example. But in a way, I'm glad it has because for my brother, I mean, you know, and I'm sure for yourself as well, having had suicidal thoughts, like I knew my brother was suicidal throughout most of his life. I was working so hard to try and like be there and be everything that he needed. That's why I got into psychology in the first place. But I know that towards the end, he had stopped talking so much about feeling suicidal. And I think he felt ashamed. And I feel like if there was more of an open discourse about those feelings, more people would go, hey, yeah, I feel like that sometimes too.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's such a liberating feeling of like, so it is normal to feel like that, and, you know, quote unquote normal to feel like that at certain times in your life. Like, it doesn't mean that there's no hope for you, doesn't mean there's no help for you. It doesn't actually necessarily mean that you're ill. Like, maybe it's just a reaction to a really crap world sometimes.
Sure.
But I just feel like maybe he was robbed of those opportunities for conversation because people are scared of it. Like, they're scared to talk about it. They're scared to talk about... I think people like to talk about suicide awareness.
Yes.
As like an abstract, distant from me thing. But people are less likely to say, actually, yeah, I feel like that sometimes too.
Yeah.
And thinking about how comforting those conversations could be. But I think a lot of people that experience those thoughts are dealing with it in isolation on their own. And they're terrified of sharing them on what it would mean if they said it out loud.
Did you know that it's the second biggest cause of death for autistics?
I'm aware that obviously it's a particularly sensitive issue for this podcast because lots of, you know, your audience will be at various times in life feeling that way as well.
Yeah. What therefore have you taken from such a traumatic, sad thing in terms of your work, your personal life, going forwards, future? What strength do you take from that? I've heard you take one thing, which is like life short and do it.
Yeah.
What else have you taken?
I guess the other thing is like, I feel like I have to do something. Don't know what it is. but I feel a pull towards something that I feel like my life has to mean more than what it has been. It has to mean more than getting up, going to work, like basically serving myself. And look, I've always been somebody who has tried to do what I can for raising awareness for various different causes, charities, all that stuff. I've always been someone who's been trying to fundraise with like my 20 mates. Do you know what I mean? But I feel after losing my brother now that I don't know how to particularly articulate it or put it into words, but I have to do something. That's what I feel like. I have to do something, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know how I'm going to manage it. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the future or even in the next few weeks. But
this evening?
I'm not even sure about that, to be honest. I don't probably get lost on the way home. But yeah, I just feel like maybe there's some space for thought. Even these conversations, for example.
You're doing what you saying that you want to take action, but you don't know what it is.
Yes.
You're doing action by coming and supporting Neurodivergence, our charity, and sitting, in the green chair.
Yeah.
You're already doing it.
Yeah, I think that I couldn't articulate what I meant, but I think that was it. It's something about taking action. And I guess the first part of that is having conversations and being visible. I didn't realize that would be a consequence necessarily. I didn't realize the neurodivergent community would reach out and be like, hey, we see you.
We see you and we want to see you.
Yeah, I didn't realize that would happen. And mainly because I probably don't fit the stereotype of what people expect to see when they see neurodivergence. But I'm so honoured. I'm like, wow, there must be something in this. There must be something I can do here. There must be a way in to see what else can happen. And thinking about mental health more generally as well. I've always championed for open conversations, honest conversations about how people are feeling and normalising those difficult conversations. Because actually, we've talked about the suicide rates in men and neurodivergent people. And I think this is a sort of stat around suicide rates in men that sometimes gets a bit jumped on by people to say, this is the problem with feminism. And look, men are having it just as hard as women. But I think the feminist response to that is actually, feminists are on your side. We want men to talk about their feelings and their emotions more than anybody else.
Oh my God, it made life so much easier.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, it's patriarchal systems that silence men in conversation, which incidentally neurodivergent people don't fit very neatly into because we don't like being in a box of what it should be to be a man or anything else. So, I guess that's a longer conversation for a different time, but food for thought in terms of how we think about each different group of people and how their struggles affect them from whichever section of society that they stand within or represent.
Yeah. So as you will know, we ask guests to bring on an item that represents their brain.
Yeah.
What did you bring?
I brought an octopus.
Okay.
The reason for this is because they have many legs, which I felt represented how many thoughts I might have going on in my head at one time. They're supposed to be quite emotionally intelligent, aren't they? And they can communicate quite well. But actually, they just kind of blob around in the ocean, which is, I guess, how my brain feels sometimes. So yeah, and also it's a Kinder Surprise toy. And when I'm in meetings, I'm always playing with something or building something. I use blue tack to build little structures and stick safety pins and paper clips into. So it's kind of a few different things that it represents, but that's my distraction toy when I'm in meetings online, because obviously I can't sit in meetings with my octopus.
Yeah,
most
but
of the time.
When you don't have your hands on show on a Zoom meeting or whatever, you can do whatever.
I actually have loads, but yeah, this was the one I looked at and was like, oh yeah, you represent my brain a bit. So that's my octopus.
Little orange octopus, if you're listening. Absolutely tiny. Well, it goes in a Kinder egg, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely tiny.
But embarrassingly, I couldn't put him together at first because I couldn't be bothered to read the instructions. And then I kept putting his head on back to front and I was like, that's just typical. So yeah, I figured it out in the end.
Ali, thanks so much. I can imagine, and it sounds like the last few days have been a total whirlwind.
Yeah,
and you are, I think you deserve some good sleep and rest and downtime and spoiling yourself. I kind of feel with just letting everything calm down. But congratulations on winning.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Oh.
I was avidly scrolling through clips and episodes that other people have appeared on. So I'm really excited to follow you and see who else you get on and keep up with what you're doing, because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, wish you all the best for this next chapter. There's a lot of people that want to hear from you. And yeah, I think you're an amazing ambassador for thinking differently and being yourself.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys, sorry. Just to, before you finish, have somebody who'd like to come and say hi to you, and then you might lose your job as the host. Just so you know.
Oh, I'm so up for that.
Come on in.
I'm so up for that. Come in.
I'm scared. Hello. Oh my God.
You look incredible. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Say hello.
Hey, how are you? Lovely to see you again.
Take a seat.
Back in the opposite spot.
Wow. Wow. It's so nice to meet you.
So lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming on my show. This is crazy.
So crazy.
What is it like to be the favourite red-headed neurodivergent lesbian in the UK? I give you the crown.
Thank you so much. Maybe we should share the crown though, because
a little Mean Girls moment.
Yeah.
Split it
Start
up.
snapping it and
Yeah,
throwing
exactly.
it out to anyone who is like us. Yeah, it feels amazing.
Yeah.
It's been, overwhelming.
I was going to say, how have you handled it? Like,
I was saying earlier when in the episode that I didn't know in the house that my neurodivergence would be like a storyline necessarily, or that being queer would necessarily be much of a storyline.
you don't
And then I've come out to loads of neurodivergent queer and neurodivergent queer people.
yeah, I mean, mine's exactly the same. I've now been like donned as the my title is neurodivergent queer from this podcast, which is
Wow.
amazing. And like, I'm so glad because it's such a big part of my storyline in life.
Yes.
So it's kind of like not really my storyline on the show, but now it is, which is great. But it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
All of especially when I feel like us neurodivergents take highs really high and then lows really low. So having all that attention, it's like roller coaster. But I'll hold your hand for it, babe. And you can hold mine.
Oh, it's so lovely to meet you. It's so lovely to meet someone so similar to me, who's had a similar experience to me.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. And also just really nice to know that there's other people like us
I know,
in the
isn't
world.
it? It's so affirming when all these DMs of people being like, I feel so seen. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, no, I feel
And
seen.
I did that. I wasn't expecting, and that's the best achievement out of the whole thing, is the fact that people feel seen, for sure.
1,000%. 1,000%. It was so lovely to meet you,
It's
darling.
so lovely to meet you too, because you were messaging me as well on Instagram, and I was like, I remember her. I watched that TV
So
show.
funny.
Of course I did. It was
yeah.
queer girls hanging out.
It's like every lesbian ever watched it.
Yeah.
It was so funny because people were like, Amy, have you been watching Big Brother? And I'm like, no. And they're like, there's a red-headed lesbian who also has a 3-letter name that starts with A and she's neurodivergent. I was like, hello.
How dare she?
It's like the calls coming from inside the house. Like, what? But you killed it, honestly. And it was so amazing to see that representation and for you to be perceived so well as well, 51% of the votes, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And you showed them.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ali Bromley. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please follow, subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple.